All right, guys, welcome back to Drew's channel. On my main channel, you guys got to be subjected to my youth group horror stories, and now I'm going to tell some of yours. A little while back, I asked you to tell me your youth group horror stories, and I got a lot of submissions, so we're gonna read at least a few of these today.
Okay.
Very long story short, my college girlfriend at the time, we were lesbians, brought me to her youth group as a friend, but I wasn't willing to go back in the closet and say I was straight. That's probably difficult at the church. The story was that I was a friend from work and I was gay. So the women's pastor, I guess there's a women's pastor or the pastor's wife? Which one? The women's pastor.
Within that type of Christianity, women are allowed to preach, but only to other women.
Oh, so. Yeah, okay. So the women's pastor, or it could be a man that's a pastor to the women. I don't know. Who knows? The women's pastor tried to give me an exorcism, and afterwards, I was locked inside the church for 9 hours until a custodian left me out.
You should report them to the police because I'm sorry.
The church is still active and that ex-girlfriend is still in the closet. Oh my God.
Wow. I'm at a loss for words. That is wild. And,
you should press charges.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah,
if you can.
That's like kidnapping.
Yeah, they held you hostage.
Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry.
That's insane.
That is insane.
I'm not sure if this is a silver lining or not, but they say, but I'm trans, so maybe the exorcism worked because I'm not a lesbian anymore.
Well, you know,
technically. Oh God, it's always like. All of my trans buddies all have little jokes about this. It's there's so much fucking trauma that they all have little jokes like this. Oh, well, maybe the exorcism actually worked, because I'm not a lesbian anymore. Man,
wow.
I am so sorry that happened. And holy fuck, I really hope that you get to pay your rent for the rest of your life after you take these people to court, because that's what they deserve.
Yeah.
That's what you deserve.
I'm interested to hear the long story.
Yeah.
I want details.
Honestly, you should email me and tell me the whole thing if you want, because I'd be really interested to hear that. Mm-hmm. One year at church summer camp, we were tasked with memorizing Bible verses. At the end of the week, all the kids were gathered one evening and were individually brought outside to recite some verses. Okay, definitely been there. If we got it right, we went to heaven, which was a bunch of counselors by the creek singing. I wouldn't really call that heaven, but...
that sounds like my personal hell. I have a thing against Christian camp counselors. They're always the worst.
Yeah, and they're not very nice to introverts.
No,
too.
I feel like they're always just forcing all the kids to have fun. And for me at... camp, I never really enjoyed it because it was just an extended period of time where I always had to be socializing and it would drain me.
Yeah.
And I just feel the camp counselors were always just gotta get through it. And it's oh gosh.
So they went to neurotypical heaven if they recited the verse right. If we got it wrong, we were sent to hell, where the rest of the counselors awaited us at the ball field with socks full of baby powder to hit us with. A lot of kids did not come back next year.
Wait, this is another one that I'm you guys should report this to the police.
Okay, so you were assaulted. You were assaulted by an entire staff.
I want to know what camp this was. I want to know when the documentary about this church camp is going to come out.
Yeah.
Because, that's full-on assault.
I know I've talked about Christian authority and stuff like that, and the real serious takes over on the second or on the main channel, but I really think they think that they are allowed to physically beat people as long as that provides some kind of incentive for these people to believe or think or know the right things. That is incredibly fucked up.
Yeah.
Okay, this is a bit of a long one, and I think that by the end, you will actually kind of think it's cool somewhat. Okay. Not at first, though. I was in high school in the late 70s. Bullying was socially acceptable. I was that loser kid who had zero friends. School was bad, but church was far worse. The senior pastor's son was one of the star players of the high school's football team, and several of his buddies went to our church. They were considered the best of the best, and they had it in for me. that means they want to beat this person up. Swirlies, wedgies, beatings, and getting urinated on, Jesus,
urinated on,
were a regular part of my youth group experience. The youth pastor thought this was character building stuff, so he encouraged the bullying.
Oh, no.
I mean, I had, youth leaders not stop active bullying because they didn't take it seriously, but like that is another level.
Yeah, that's another level for sure.
Telling my parents would have only made things worse for me. They would have said that I deserved it. Ugh. Oh my God. Lock-ins were the worst. This is where you like spend all night at the church and you're not allowed to get out of the building. They lock all the doors and you're trapped in there, and that makes it more fun somehow. I've done a lot of those. I'd get dropped off at the church, and the first thing I would do would be to try to hide. That's somewhat relatable. I've done a little bit of that. This just turned it all into a game of hide and seek against the jocks. Since most of the church was locked up, it never ended well until it was around Christmas time, so it had gotten dark early. My parents dropped me off. I didn't check in at the fellowship hall. Instead, I took my sleeping bag and stuff and managed to sneak out the main door when some of the other kids were being dropped off. I wasn't sure where to go, but then I remembered there was a cemetery about half a block away. That's where I spent the night.
Wow.
In fact, that's where I went for every lock-in after that. My tormentors figured out I was sneaking out of the church, but they were too afraid to actually scour the cemetery. I found a safe haven where every other kid was scared to go.
Wow. I mean, to me, sleeping in the cemetery is like, ooh, I kind of want to do that. But to like most people, that's like not a fun experience. Yeah. And it's really, really sad and disturbing to me that this person felt like they had no other option. It was worth it for them to go sleep in a cemetery over sleeping in, I'm assuming, a climate-controlled church building.
Yeah, in December, too.
Oh, it was in December?
Yeah, it was around Christmas time, this person said.
Wow. Again, another one where I'm like, you guys need to report this to somebody, because this does sound like straight-up assault. And yeah.
I think there's a lot of experiences like this that people of this generation experienced. And I think that some people come away from this and are like, that was wrong. I have trauma surrounding that. I've been trying to deal with it. And I would guess that this is what this person probably is doing, has done. And then there are also people who were kind of abused so badly because it was socially acceptable to abuse people, that they are kind of like, well, you need to go through what I went through. Like, my childhood was hell, and so bullying should still be able to be a thing. For some reason, that's a thing. Yeah. I also think that this is a perfect illustration of why some people associate, like what I'm wearing right now. I'm wearing this shirt that has Baphomet on it, and I'll show you my pants too. I have it's out of focus, but there's like spooky stuff all over it, and it says like
there's skulls,
death right there. It's just generic spooky stuff. But there's a reason why I think a lot of people associate that kind of aesthetic with like kindness and gentleness and empathy. And even though it doesn't seem like it would fit aesthetically, being nice with scary stuff. Yeah. But so often the people who utilize the aesthetic of, being bright and cheery and, I don't know, looking positive all the time, talking positive, not swearing, that kind of thing, are actually really brutal, violent people who have an oppressive ideology that they use to hurt people. And then they excuse themselves by the fact that, like, aesthetically they look very like nice and bright and sunny.
Yeah, I mean, I think that goes back to something that we were just talking about in a video for my channel. But I think a lot of those types of people, they're very concerned about optics. So they'll be very like bright and cheery and like wear the colorful outfits and like have a smile on their face and only be into like normie shit because they're very concerned about their outward appearance and coming off a certain way. And I think that people who experience a lot of this stuff and have this kind of trauma or just have felt different or weird, they tend to gravitate towards the, like, interests and hobbies that are considered to be like weird or out of the norm. So they'll be into like, this kind of stuff.
Yeah. A really fascinating example of a person coming to associate darkness, like the cemetery, with relief and safety, and the church the church with evil, basically. Yeah. Not a horror story, but an enlightening one for me. In boys' prayer group, we were going through a devotional, a chapter a week, and at the beginning of the session, we'd always vote which chapter rather than going in order. We were on a new book, and I rolled my eyes because 2 weeks in a row, the group had overwhelmingly voted for the chapter on sex and the one on dating, which were boring in my mind because everyone in the room already knew exactly what the author was going to say. We'd been on this a dozen times, and nothing was ever new. All of my fellow teens in youth group just wanted to talk about sex. Light bulb. Talking about not having sex was the only acceptable way for us to talk about or even openly think about sex. Our obsession with celibacy was because it was ironically the only socially acceptable way for us to, at that age, be lustful. Understanding that relationship made me understand so much of the sexual dynamics of Christianity. Isn't that true? The sex-obsessed people they're always like celibacy. Yeah. Like you have to be pure, but then they're talking about sex constantly.
Yeah. No, I mean, in the mission community that I grew up in, I mean, like, you know, sex before marriage was considered a sin. We had a very strong modesty and purity culture, yet so much, like such a disproportionate amount of focus was on sex and like sexuality and that kind of stuff. And I also think that they're really onto something when they say that like that's the only appropriate or like socially acceptable way for them to engage in those topics, because we see that all the time just in Christian, like in the Christian influencer sphere. Like if you go to Girls Gone Bible's channel and look at what the most popular videos are of theirs, it's always going to be the stuff about dating or sex or marriage or all of that kind of stuff. Yeah. And then also like influencers like Bryce Crawford, you go and look at all of his content and it's him talking to people that are, you know, people at Pride parades, or them going into TST's headquarters and filming the whole thing. It's always this. Or
talking to porn stars. He's done that multiple times. Yeah, he's talking
to porn stars. Yeah, it's always talking to these like very, what they would consider to be like out there characters.
Yeah.
And like our theory on that is because that is a socially acceptable way for Christians to kind of like engage in this world that they're usually prohibited from. But because it's through the lens of, oh, we're talking to them about the gospel, suddenly it's okay for them to watch that type of content. But it's like, we all know that you're there because you want to hear what the ex-porn star has to say.
Yeah.
Like, we all know why you're there. And you're just like justifying it as, well, like, I want them to be saved.
Yeah. And like, on that same note there, I have, along with Dr. Joseph Laycock, responded to a lot of these videos where people talk about how they engaged in, demonic sexual practices in satanic ritual abuse, how they used to be Satanists, how they did all of this like extremely sexually deviant stuff. There are interviews out on YouTube with millions of views. I mean, there are like hundreds, maybe thousands of these types of interviews that have been taking place always. You can actually read early Christian literature and this exists, the same thing. People describing orgies, people describing like incest, like all this stuff really graphically. And then at the end being like, and I don't do that anymore because I'm a Christian. I think, as I've said, that this is porn for Christians in a way it's been sanitized, like you're saying. It's been sanitized so that it's socially acceptable within their moral paradigm. But essentially, this is nothing but, I called it a stag film being described.
Yeah.
Hi, Drew. This really hits close to home for me. As we all know, youth groups are places where usually one or a handful of actual adults are present, and college-age adults are leading small groups of younger kids through activities and games and Bible reading. I went to a Foursquare Protestant, non-denominational, I guess, youth group a lot growing up. My small My small group leaders were barely out of high school themselves, and while I know they meant well, they had absolutely no education in regards to how to work with younger people in an educational way in any capacity. The youth group I went to had a ton of issues with bullying, harassment, physical fighting, and general lack of supervision. We had fun and did a lot of amazing activities, including climbing mountains together and renting summer camp spots for youth group retreats. But there were some really problematic parts as well. To start, when anyone said a swear word, my small group leaders would twist their nipples as punishment.
Sorry?
Thinking back on this, what the actual fuck? There were times when someone would get hurt during a game or activity and say something like shit, and at one point I literally got swarmed by my entire small group or like 8 other young boys and our much larger group leaders all trying to rip my nipples off because I said a swear word. I literally ran away and ran all the way home 3 miles. I told my parents, and of course nothing happened. Our youth pastor was a guy who ended up cheating on his wife, but while he served as youth pastor, there were several incidents where he called me and my friends at the youth group F-slur because we were playing with toys.
Because we were playing with toys?
Yeah. Skipping a little bit here, there were a lot of other incidents. I actually got sort of excommunicated by the youth group and my friends there because they caught me smoking weed. Turns out the stoner friends I made were way nicer and never attempted to physically assault me for saying swear words. Again, with the violence.
Yeah. And also that seems somewhat sexual. Like,
yeah.
It almost like seemed like they wanted an excuse to like touch someone else's, sensitive areas.
Yeah.
So yeah, I find that very disturbing.
Again, I think that like people think that they're allowed to do violence on other people so long as they're the right type of person.
Yeah.
So long as they're like upholding some kind of standard of purity, it's okay to like do things that harm people way more than hearing the word shit.
Yeah.
Also, yeah, I was called that same slur at my youth group, but it was by kids. And when I would report it, it was always my mom intervening, not my youth pastor. But, that was seen as a bad thing. Of course, we were supposed to be homophobic, but you can't say slurs to other people there. You might, if you like were in a heated moment, maybe you could like say that about other people, but you couldn't call someone that directly. Yeah,
I was kind of wondering if like their issue was more, not that they were accusing you of being gay, but more because they're using a word that's like a bad word.
Yeah, it had more to do with
the actual word.
It wasn't a slur to like my community. It wasn't a slur. It was just like a word that was like kind of rude. It was kind
of like unsavory.
Yeah, it was a swear word. It'd be like saying dumbass instead of dummy.
Yeah.
So we were technically still part of the youth group the summer after high school graduation. So the summer I was 18, I went on the missions trip. Those are notoriously awful and pointless. One night in the girls' bedroom, some of the freshmen were discussing how uncomfortable they were by the comments and gestures an older guy, 18 or 19, was making toward them. As designated big sis, I confronted the guy the next day. Good for you. Told him how his comments were creeping girls out and that finding 14-year-olds attractive is really weird at our age. Yeah. I guess he cried because the youth pastor pulled me aside and told me I was not being Christ-like and I needed to apologize. I stood my ground and said that behavior was gross and I don't really care if what I said wasn't nice because I care more about the kids than the grown man.
Yeah, good for you.
Yeah, seriously. Protecting a man's feelings over the young girl's safety was probably my last straw at that church. I was still a very devout Christian and would be for another 6 years, but had begun deconstructing the toxic beliefs of my childhood church about a year prior.
Man, and again, what was it, a pastor or youth group?
Youth pastor.
Was more upset that this person wasn't being nice than he was upset that there is this older dude creeping on these young girls.
Yeah. Again, their safety is not as important as people
the
just
optics
like being
of it.
Yeah.
I don't think I've actually ever talked about this on like your channel or my channel, but I kind of like relate to this story in that I went to like a Christian summer camp. I think I went like once or twice. The time I went, I think I was like 14 or 15. I can't remember exactly how old I was. But there was this camp counselor who was part of like the worship team at the camp. And he like kind of started a friendship with me. And then like eventually, like granted, eventually when he like, I could kind of sense that he liked me. But he didn't really admit that until I was already like 18 and he was, I don't know, 22 or 23. But I never really thought about it until like a couple of years ago when I was looking back on it. And I was like, it was really obvious that this guy, I think, liked me more than friends. And like also, why was he starting a friendship or talking to someone who was attending the camp as like a child, like there to go to the camp, and he was there at the camp as part of like the worship team. Yeah. And I think I like ended up telling him like years later, like, yeah, that was like really weird that you were like talking to me when we had that big of an age gap, and like he didn't like recognize it. But I guess I've never talked about this publicly, but yeah, like when I was younger, I didn't really recognize it for what it was and how it was how it was very creepy. Yeah. And now I'm like, oh shit, that was really weird.
I mean, and the Christian community around you was like, no, this is fine.
Yeah, no one seemed to be that concerned. Like, I think there wasn't so much of an age gap that it would have been like illegal, but it was still weird.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. You said he was 22 or 23 when you were 18?
I think so. I feel like there was at least like a 4 or 5 year difference between us.
I mean,
if he was there at the camp as kind of like a counselor, he had to be over 18, and I would have been like 14 or 15.
Yeah, that's weird.
Okay.
That's weird.
Yeah.
That's fucked up.
That is fucked up.
Okay, this is a really weird one. There's a lot going on here, so buckle up. Our church was right next to an evangelical college, the one I ended up going to, of course. So we had a ton of aspiring youth pastors help at our youth group when I was in middle school. Our youth group absolutely sucked. All of the worship songs were originals written by one of the guys, and they would literally pace the aisles to make sure we were singing.
Okay.
Otherwise, we didn't get a snack.
We didn't get a snack?
Come on, man. One of our leaders weighed close to 300 pounds and insisted we call him Panda, and he would sit on kids who brought snacks into the small group because we weren't outside the main area. Sitting on kids as punishment? That's not okay. That's creepy. We had another that was an aspiring rapper who insisted we call him by his rapper name, Sprang. This person saying, I am literally 14, by the way. 14 years old having to call this guy in charge of you Sprang.
Okay.
And I'm assuming like listening to his raps.
Well, I think it's Spang.
Oh, Spang.
I mean, it's still weird.
Spang. Okay, Spang. It sucked so bad, me and my friend would try to hide under the tables in the church coffee lounge once our parents dropped us off. Yeah, the original songs, Panda and Spang, no. I would hide also. I'd probably sneak out to a cemetery. Anyway, our leader of small group one year was this guy from the nearby college who was one of those on fire for Christ types. I know the type. He would do these super loud long prayers with dramatic pauses for emphasis. You know the type. And would also say Lord like every 3 words. Yeah. It even seemed phony to us 8th graders. Highly embarrassing stuff. One day they decided to talk to the children about the sins of homosexuality, naturally. He and Panda, I love that you're calling this person Panda rather than their real name, but he and Panda would talk about how horrible it was, how God hated it, and how the world celebrates it. And my friend raised his hand and was like, but aren't gay people kind of just like born that way? We weren't inclusive by any means. We were 8th graders from white suburbia, but we were able to recognize that no one would willingly be ridiculed by their homophobic peers as gay as an act of choice. That's solid reasoning. Our youth leader got so pissed and started arguing with my buddy and culminated in, how would you know? Maybe you're gay. Jesus. My buddy never came back to church again. LOL. Wow. Okay. Which youth group would you rather go to out of all of these so far?
How can I make this decision? None of them. I don't want to go to any youth groups.
I mean, you're getting like physically or sexually harassed, and or you're dying of cringe while also getting like sexually harassed.
Like either way, I'm getting assaulted at some point, it sounds like.
Yeah. We used to occasionally at least go to a church in East Texas where there was like an aspiring musician, aspiring rapper, on fire for Christ, takes long dramatic pauses, says Lord all the time guy. He was up on the worship team and
What church is this?
Motion.
Oh, okay, yes.
He would be like up on the stage and, you know, it'd be like a normal worship service. It was a little cringe because of how, I don't know, the people acted, but he would be like, he would go from, I don't know, I think he was like running like a soundboard type thing to, you know, running it to being just like this, like looking like he's receiving something from the heavens, like in this strip mall of a church, basically. And I mean, I remember speaking to him and you'd be like, hey, he'd greet you at the door and he'd be like, hey, what's up, man? So dope that you're here. I'm so happy. The Lord has blessed me that you are here right now, bro. Thank you. And he'd be like, go home. Like,
well, I know that guy actually, he seemed to kind of like have these giant like swings where he'd be like all of a sudden on fire for the Lord.
Yeah.
And, like be going to church all the time. And then he would have this swing of like not going to church and like partying and doing the stuff that you're not supposed to do as a Christian. So I think that he was just
sensation seeking
and not the most stable of a person, which, you know, I feel for people that are in that position because a lot of the time that's chemicals in the brain that can't really help it. But I have noticed that a lot of the people that are at church that are like really energetic and like really like they leave everything in their life to suddenly pursue Christianity, they tend to be people that kind of just go with their impulses.
Yeah. And I mean, people of all types can get involved in like a community and mutual aid and things like that. But unfortunately, in a lot of Christian communities, there's not really a lot of oversight for leadership. And that can culminate in these dudes who maybe aren't necessarily the most stable having some influence and power in a way that's not particularly healthy for other people see span.
Yeah. And I think like they kind of feed into that and they like take that to be a very true conversion and like, oh, you're truly on fire for the Lord, when it's like, no, I think that this person has a chemical imbalance right now. And like they don't, there's no discussions around that. They like kind of just like feed into that person's, I don't want to like say delusions because I feel like that's making them sound, like I don't want to demean anyone for having chemical imbalances, but I just mean like there isn't like solid, stable support for that person.
Yeah. Last one for now. Let me know if I should make another one of these because I have literally dozens more. Not really a horror story, but I still cringe when I think about it. My youth pastor gave my 14-year-old self a book on creationism that I believed so much, I went and had an argument with my biology teacher over it.
You've been there?
I have plenty to say here. What do you think before I share my own embarrassing story about this?
You know, I was never a creationist per se. The way that I was brought up, like we were not taught that the earth was only 6,000 years old, but we were also not really taught that evolution was true.
Right.
It was more of like, we're kind of in the middle ground of like, maybe evolution's a real thing, but if it is, God like created it and guided it.
Yeah.
So I never really had any arguments with teachers over that kind of thing. And even if I had bought into creationism, I would have been way too introverted and like socially anxious to try to argue with anyone over that.
Yeah.
So you tell your story.
Okay. So I was either homeschooled like just by my mom, or I went to a Christian homeschool co-op. So I had no one to argue with about this. Like they were all creationists. But I did argue with the only people in my life that I ever spoke to who were not fundamentalist Christians before like I went to college. And this was skaters on the internet primarily. So I was in, I'll just go ahead and say, it doesn't even exist anymore. There was this skate shop out in California called Aggressive Mall.
Yeah.
And they had this forum for rollerbladers, aggressivemall.com forum. And I spent like every day on this before like social media stuff was actually like properly as big as it is now. And there was a thread on there one day that someone was like, yeah, like what do people like deeply believe in? I'm not trying to, start any fights, but like what matters to you? What do you think is true? Basically, like what are your beliefs kind of thing. Someone started that. And a bunch of people were saying like a bunch of different things. And one person said, evolution, since it's proven true, like I think that we came from an evolutionary process. And I, as a 15-year-old who was already probably known, let's be real, as a dork on that forum, responded and said, like, in all caps, proven, with a bunch of, exclamation marks and question marks. And then I said a few things about how it's like obviously not true. There's no real evidence of it. And it's like a conspiracy by like, I don't know if I said satanic communists or not, but like
science.
Yeah, like scientists are purposely distorting the truth. And I'm like, and if none of that like convinces you, then let me just put it this way. And I quoted Kent Hovind.
Oh no.
And I said, in being like a Christian, I didn't even say creatious. In being a Christian, I believe in the beginning, God. And as an evolutionist, which no one calls himself that, as an evolutionist, you believe in the beginning, dirt. And that was my response. People dogpiled on me bad in there. Valid. And they're like, oh my God, LOL, this kid is like so pathetic. This kid is so innocent. Holy shit. And isn't it true that like you live on like out on a farm in the country in Texas? And I was like, yeah.
You might as well said, you believe that your grandpa is a rock?
I know. Well, my friend Lizzie looks up. I've been there. And I have also publicly humiliated myself.
It happens.
Thank you guys for watching. Piggy's really sleepy today, so I just decided to pick up his whole bed, and he looks quite content. Yeah, I don't know. We still don't have a sign-off. I feel like this is the sign-off now. We just say we don't have a sign-off. Uh-oh.
Well, let's just say the first word that comes to our mind. 1, 2, 3,
barnacles. Okay, that's the sign-off. Bye.